We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The View, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Greetings, everyone out there in Viewland, our View viewers. It is so good to be with you. I'm the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, 1/3 of the lead ministry team at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, the Unitarian Universalist congregation that brings you this weekly talk show and has for almost 400 episodes now. We are wrapping up, I believe it is season 9 of The View, and our 400th episode will be very soon, and we hope that will be super special as we wrap up season 9. It is good to be with you. I'm joining you from Peekskill, New York, a little bit north of New York City, on the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger bands of the Lenape Nation, where spring and summer are battling, and today summer is winning. And this weekend, of course, when we want to actually go to the town pool, spring will be winning again, because that's life here at this time of year. Kiana, Danae, how are you?
Good morning. I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is the land of the Potawatomi people, who I think are still here. So we'll use the present tense today. And you might hear a little bit of rumbling. The lawnmower people came out the back, and there's people doing something to the front of my house and my windows. So it's going to be bumpy, but hey, that's what you pay all those fees for, right? Yeah, and I'm excited to be here. I just, so that's where I'm at. Janine, how are you in Arizona? Oh, by the way, it's hot in here. It is 85 degrees outside and I have no air conditioning and 3 fans on. I'm probably going to melt away. I feel like a little Eminem over here, just going to melt in your mouth, not in your hand. Janine.
Hello, hello. Kiana Danae, you need to come out to visit. We'll throw you in our pool and we can hang out there and cool off. I am in Phoenix, Arizona, the unceded territory of the Otham, and it is in the 70s right now, and it's only going to be up to 91. So I am very much enjoying however long we can get before it is 110 every day. My kids think it's too cold for the pool, actually, because it's only in the 90s. So that's what happens when your Arizona kids only swim in bathwater pools. But that's it for me right now. How's it going, DC? How are you?
Greetings, everyone. I am DC Fortune. Things are going well here. I was on retreat last week, a little rest and healing retreat up in Maine, where I ate probably more fried clams than are reasonable for any human being, but it was delightful. I got to see the ocean, I got to smell the pines, and catch up with some old friends. It was absolutely what I needed. I am here today in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, on the banks at the confluence of the North and West branch of the Susquehanna River, and home of the Susquehannock and Lenni Lenape people. And it is going to be 91 today. So I got up today and I closed all the windows in the house and turned on the air conditioner, and am hoping that will keep the house reasonable. There is no way in hell I'm going outside today. That's just unreasonable for, this part of like the first day of June. No, I just refuse. So anyway, it's great to be here. And I'm excited about today's program, and I'm going to hand it back to Michael, who's going to do all the introducing sorts of things.
It is definitely an odd time of year when it's 91 in New York and 91 in Ann Arbor and 91 in Pennsylvania and 91 in Phoenix. We'll get to our wonderful guest who's in Western North Carolina, where I'm hoping it's not 91 degrees today in a moment. But first we like to do what we call the UU Roundup, to look around Unitarian Universalism and see what's going on. I noticed that there was a candidate forum for the one contested election at our General Assembly this year. Someone is running by petition against the nominating committee's slate of people for the nominating committee. And I have not watched this forum, but I am told by people that I trust that it is worth watching to get a real sense of the distinctions among the candidates. The petition candidate is a longtime member of a group that has spent decades opposing anti-racism work in the Unitarian Universalist Association, and he does not hide that. So yes, DC is telling me I'm being diplomatic. I'm trying my best to both call out the fuck shit and not say his name. So there we go. I'm trying my best, and there we go. We have broken the 4-letter word barrier that would not normally be broken so quickly without Aisha here. And what else is going on around Unitarian Universalism, beloved Janine? I know you were part of an important training that I think people should know about.
Yes, the other day, Side with Love and the Safer Congregations team hosted Preparing for Pride, which was a webinar for religious professionals specifically to address some of the courage and resilience and discernment we all need to be ready for Pride Month and to show up for our LGBTQ selves and siblings so that we can be ready and prepared, because some of our congregations across the country and a lot of our communities across the country have received threats from right-wing Christian nationalists about Pride events. I know here in Arizona, we have several events that have been on watch lists, specifically our partners at Drag Story Hour Arizona. And so for us here in Arizona, this Saturday, we have a joy team and de-escalation training for UUs with our partners at Drag Story Hour Arizona. We also have some amazing community partners like White People Against White Supremacy that have basically a security team that's non-carceral outside of the police state that are offering security. And then also our partners at Black Phoenix Organizing Collective and Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro are sending folks to our training so that they can show up at Drag Story Hour for so our community can create some safety. We really talked a lot on the webinar about the community safety, that thinking beyond individual safety. When we think of community safety, we think of some of us move through the world with more natural safety because of some identities we carry, right? I have more safety as a white person in the world. And some of us move through the world with more natural risk. Well, not natural risk, racist and transphobic risk, because of identities we carry. And so community safety means some of us are willing to take a little bit more risk so that others of us can have a little bit more safety. And so it was a great webinar. It's recorded, so I'm sure that you can still see it from the Side with Love and Safer Congregations team. If your community is asking these questions and preparing to be ready, there are tons of resources that were shared from Safer Congregations and Side with Love so that they can seed your community conversation so that we don't have to let anxiety and fear dominate this conversation, but we can be prepared and ready and act from our values.
Thank you. I mean, we can own just how horrible it is that we live in a world where that training has to happen.
Oh, yeah.
What's the fabulous stuff going on for Pride, y'all? Like, there's fabulousness happening there. Kiana
Danae, you're muted.
I thought I unmuted. I just thought I left myself unmuted on purpose. I know that it's Pride, right, y'all? But I got to tell you, I'm tired. So, like, just like during Black History Month, I'm like, I got 11 other months. I'll fill in the blanks. I feel that way about Pride this time, which is unfortunate. But y'all, I've been doing Pride for like 25 years. And so at this point, I'm just like, just give me the rainbow bagel and leave me alone for a little bit. And so
you get bagels?
Pride Month. I'm excited that we get to bring in all of this queer energy into the world. And I'm also okay being an observer of Pride this year and not a participant. Like, it's okay to so I say this just to say, if you were like me and need to step back because you've been doing the work, you've been battling in all of these different places that are building up laws and spaces that don't want us, it's okay if for the next 30 days you tap out, because we have 11 other months we got to stand up. So use your energy well. For those folks who are stepping up for June, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of us who need to step back a little bit this cycle, do that and take care of yourself. So yeah, I'm excited. So I say that to ... My friend Joy. Michael, do you want to tell us a little about who our guest is today?
Yes, we are so glad. Let's move on to our guest because we really want to have a conversation with Joy. Joy Berry is with us today. Joy is the Children and Families Faith Development Specialist in the UUA's Lifespan Faith Engagement Office. As a professional religious educator, she has served congregations in 3 states. Most recently, as the interim director of the FOS Collaborative at Meadville Lombard Theological School, Joy's focus was innovative practices in faith formation and equipping congregations for culture change with resources and curricula that center faith formation for all. This is a really timely conversation to have about what it means to engage with innovative practices and culture change for in faith formation. And we are really glad to have Joy. If you are a Facebook friend of Joy's, you also know that she lives on a farm. And I've missed farm updates recently since you've been full-time at UUA headquarters, Joy. But it's really wonderful to see you and to have you on the show with us. And you're muted for some reason. We're going to work on getting Joy sound.
All right.
Oh, wait, I think
There we are. Yay.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So excited to be here. It's been a while. The last time I joined y'all, it was March of 2020, and we thought we had some answers for what religious education was going to need and do and be for the pandemic. And we were babes in the woods and very idealistic. But also a lot of good ideas came forward, which is what happens when you get some great wisdom in the room. So hope I can add to that today. And yes, the farm is moving along. There's nothing being born right now, Michael. I'll ping you, like and subscribe or whatever to for baby lambs. So don't worry, you won't miss it.
puppy season. I watched your puppies give birth live on Facebook. I think maybe like half of Unitarian Universalist religious professionals were watching the live stream of puppies being born.
I also watched that, I will say. Well, let's talk about faith formation, shall we? So we're now 3 years into March of 2020. And surely we've learned some things in those 3 years. We, like, as naive as we might have been in March of 2020, surely we've actually learned some things. So if you had like a couple things that you think we've actually learned that congregation should hear, what would they be?
I actually would just flip that a little bit and say that what I have learned from congregational leaders.
Sure.
I was asked to give a short video report on the state of RE. I guess this is something that used to happen several years ago. Some of you may remember it. It was the UUA would give a report to the UUMA on the state of parish ministry or the state of ministry. And so I was the person to give the report for the religious education domain. And it was such a big deal to me, like, make a 4-minute video, but it was such a big deal to me. I spent the first months of the time I've been at the UUA on various projects, but checking in with a lot of religious educators. And I tried to carry forward the clarified learning that I got from those conversations. And some of those are things like we needed to urgently innovate to make religious education even possible, so at an existential level. And in many ways, religious educators and education, that was a huge success story. I heard so many stories of how religious educators became really important and valued assets in this new innovative sphere wherein a bunch of different skills needed to be at the table quickly. So that was great because religious educators are natural innovators. But I also heard that urgency has taken a toll, and that religious educators would love to hold on to the innovative practices and the freedom to lead and share responsibility in shared ministry approaches, as we did often during the pandemic, and yet ways to leave the urgency part behind because the burnout is so real. One of the most powerful statements I heard from a longtime veteran DRE was, every religious educator I know is 3 steps from quitting. And I would add to that, some who don't think they're even 5 steps from quitting are being let go. It's a time of great anxiety, as all cultural shifts, all times of human change bring, as we know. And that anxiety comes out in a bunch of sideways ways. And we are still grappling with how do we do the work to be truly liberative and just within our congregations. And until we are there, let me say that a different way. As we get better at that, we will get better at those notions of how we want to be in the world, this aspirational faith.
2020 wasn't only the pandemic, right? It was also the murder of George Floyd and the uprisings. And so when we talk about what we've learned from 2020, I know, Joy, you are an incredible expert at fascism. Can you tell us a little bit about how some of those grapplings that UU congregations have done since before 2020 and then reignited in 2020 have tied into some of this faith development work throughout our faith tradition?
I did not have fascism on my view bingo card today, Janine. I love that you have, wow, you have a lot of faith in me, right?
I do.
I'm not an expert in fascism. However, my geographical, my cultural, my heart location is definitely deeply rooted in areas that now we see a lot of authoritarian turns. In fact, I live in a place and choose to live in a place as a farmer where I am, I'm a part of a community where some of what you're describing in the macro with a big word, I see it on the daily. And I think that's the nature of my real experience and understanding of this beyond, the college stuff, which is way on back there. Nobody wants to read about that anymore. But yeah, the experience sociologically of what it means to be in a time of rapid transformation and of tribalism means that people, particularly those who have some reason to think they've been left behind or are no longer included in a conversation, or who live in abandoned places of empire, as the great, leftist Christian progressive Catholics describe, are absolutely taking a libertarian, or taken even further, an authoritarian point of view on how it is, what is our relationship with authority and what is our relationship with the state. And I see that this in Unitarian Universalism as well, for certain. I think that, like when I used to mention how we are not fundamentalist and we won't not talk about Jesus, no matter how many parents don't like it, because we're not fundamentalist and we think that the answers are out there in a variety of ways. I think that many Unitarian Universalists find it very difficult to imagine that I could possibly be describing anything having to do with their experience or them when I say that that authoritarianism also surfaces in our faith communities. Do you want me? What do you want? What do you want?
Can you hold for just a second? Is anybody else? Did she just become a Jedi? Did Joy's conversation just become very?
Yes, I got that too.
Oh
yeah. We had some.
Let me see if these headphones just turned on by themselves. This is AI, proto AI.
They're listening. Somebody's listening.
DC, but you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher to me too.
That just could be because I woke up.
That's fair. Oh, it's everybody now on
I hear a little bit of echo, but not much. So I'm going to trust that Tanner will let us know if.
All right, Tanner, let us know if it got too weird and we can't proceed.
Okay.
So Joy, you say that this makes sense to me, because when I think about what's going on in the larger culture, of course it's reflected in Unitarian Universalism. I think sometimes we think of ourselves as an exception, like, oh, well, all of the Trump stuff, that can't possibly be affecting UUs, or all of the backlash by some folks about the uprisings of 2020 and leaning into anti-racism learning, that can't possibly be in Unitarian Universalism. But we know it is. We talk about it on The View all the time. So as a religious educator, what is the antidote for that?
I do think the antidotes are very important. And I think it's really important philosophically to situate ourselves as being part of the people. And I think that is an issue that many Unitarian Universalists really struggle with. And if you have a problem seeing yourself as one of the masses who are affected by the winds of change and struggle, then you are going to find it very difficult to be in true solidarity. You mentioned the word exceptional, and American exceptionalism is has been driving force historically, particularly for well-educated, powerful people, those who in our system, because of race, gender, um, being cis, all of the things that we know keep people from being marginalized often, uh, have found that to be an extremely important thread because it consistently reifies the fact that they have power, they have authority, and that they should be in charge. So in our congregations, we have the exact same strata of rankism, authority, status, power, money at play. And it should not be a surprise, as you said, that in moments particularly of change, and even more specifically, moments that ask us to look at ourselves rather than assuming that we are somehow different, that's going to anxiously provoke that kind of reactivity. And I think the most important thing we can understand here, and this draws it back to faith formation, is that we are the recipients and the participants in a faith that actively names and calls us to be in process, in formation. Cue the Beyonce. Like, we need really to understand that we are not standing aside, separate, witnessing smugly drinking fair trade coffee and eating quinoa while these things are happening. We are Americans. We are part of American culture. And it's very easy to point the finger outside rather than doing the within and the among work, as we discovered, didn't we, Janine, as we developed, the big trajectory for faith formation for beloved conversations. Understanding that if people are not supported and expected to do the within work, they will not do more than write a big check and show up with a t-shirt that may or may not reflect how aspirational or complete our theological manifestation is in this world. So, antidotes. You may be surprised to hear me say this, but the antidote is more faith formation. It's my only sermon, and you've heard it a million times. But until we have adults who are both expected and excited to get involved in learning more long term, as faith formation is a long haul project. And too often, because of the interplay of power and money and authority and race and optics, we have folks in congregations who resist even the more progressive approaches of ministers and religious educators who attempt to set high expectations and to guide folks through the process of what it means to be learning as a UU through the whole life. And until we do that, we will continue to face an existential gap that we are refusing to mind, which in my mind is one of the worst sins. Because we do depend on volunteers to run our religious education programs, whatever the upper limit is on these adults in our congregations who are not actively engaged in faith formation is going to have trickle-down effects and essentially have a chilling and constraining effect on the capacity of our churches and congregations and our kids and youth to really get there. And it's going to continue to limit the amount of come-inners who find us and find us to not be hypocritical. So yeah, brings it back to faith formation. And that's one of the reasons, we'll talk about this later maybe, but it's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the Article 2 project, which I'm working on with you and others. So put a pin in that.
Well, or let's talk about it now.
Let me get a drink.
Yeah, so I hear you saying that the key for adults in a congregation who are feeling maybe left behind as the world changes, and they're having big feelings, and they're perhaps getting swept in or find it enticing to be in some authoritarian conversations, that the key to that is faith formation. And I think that that's so important to say, and it's related to our Article 2 work, because I talk to religious professionals and congregations all the time, and they're not sure what to do. And sometimes because of maybe, advice they got that maybe wasn't sound or based in what you're saying, or even our own kind of white supremacy culture tendency to be conflict avoidant, are thinking maybe the key is just, ignore it, don't give it any attention, and it'll go away. And I hear you saying faith formation. I think maybe Michael had a question too that I stepped on, though, that was in line with kind of some of this. What does that look like? What does the faith formation look like then to deal with authoritarianism or kind of that liberal bent in our own congregations?
You want me to answer that, or am I waiting on Michael?
Why don't you go for it, Joy? And if anything I have to say is still relevant after you've said what you have to say, I'll ask
it. Well, yeah. So when I say that faith formation is the answer, that seems like a really easy answer, right? I mean, religious educators have been saying that's the answer forever. But I don't know that we have ever fully grappled with how important it is to have a shared ministry. As Aisha says, a collaborative ministry approach, but shared ministry using the terms of the Shared Ministry Task Force going back to 2012. I think we have continued to resist at some probably often subconscious level about what it means to fully join forces and be sort of shoulder ready with ministry professionals to meet this reality. Now, having said that, I will say that I do not believe that the number of authoritarian leaning Unitarian Universalists is high. I do think that it's a marginal group. However, it's at the margins that we have the most risk and the most opportunity. And those who, are actually professionals and experts in social change and, the rise of anti-democratic thought are pretty clear on this one maxim, which is that what is on the surface in your congregation is almost certainly a reflection of a exponential experience below the surface. And we know that, institutional social change theory tells us that we have fairly distinct groups of folks who are open to change and innovation and major transformation in congregations and other institutions. And it's really important for those groups to talk to their adjacent groups rather than having the radical, if that's the minister, usually not, according to the research, but the most radical folks should not be talking to, the more conservative folks. So at the margins, conversations are happening in the parking lot and in covenant groups. And I think that a recognition that we need a very much a landscape approach to understanding some of the sociological norms here, and just rolling your eyes and saying, well, these UUs in, wherever, Dallas, have nothing in common with some of our uneducated or lack of educated rural white folks who are sort of enticed by this ideology, or any other group you want to mention. But again, that's how systems keep us from doing the hard work, is to imagine that we are completely different from the other. So I don't think it's a large number, and yet those conversations are really important. And so, for example, on something like Article 2, that's where this emerges, right? This ability to actually observe what I'm talking about. There's been a call for a change, a potential change. There's a proposal. There's a year of study. There's this opportunity. If we have a positive vote in FGA, there's this opportunity to see this as a faith formation experience and to expect and invite that congregations will engage in a learning process together in order to prepare not only their delegates, but the people for this shift, and to get amendments and input, etc. where I see this popping up so far in my work as the leader of the engagement, the engagement process and resource trajectory that I've been working on, is that there are folks who just want to shut the conversation down. And that doesn't necessarily seem like a fascist move. You know, folks, just a couple of folks in a congregation who are like, we've got too much on our plate. This is causing conflict. We're being silenced. Therefore, I don't even want to have this conversation. But the conversation should be one that is available to everyone in the congregation. And learning together, whether it's about Article 2 or anything else, this is the opportunity that we have to see major changes in this real gap in faith formation capacity in our adults, which, as I say, is an existential problem for our faith. So, you know, I feel like it's not that complicated to keep talking, to have some guides and some suggestions and some content, ideally that arise from the people who are situated in their called and hired positions that they've created and collaborated on, and to really engage deeply on this matter. And it's interesting how just talking about something, and if we continue to talk about something, we'll pull some of those people from the margins in, and it will push some away. And that's what mission does. And we should be okay with that. Mission allows us to say no to some things and some people, and allows some people to say no to us, so that we can do the work we are called to do in this. And if we're not missional, we shouldn't expect anybody to be leaving, because everybody's going to be getting what they want. So yeah, there's my soapbox on that.
Well, and it's also what clarity about what our values are does, right? There have to be boundaries around, around what our values are. So I want to go back to the Article 2 opportunity for faith formation.
Yeah.
And maybe like take a slight, like not a hugely different approach, but just a teeny tiny little different approach. I'm seeing resistance to the current proposal to change Article 2 that to me comes down to grief over change. It comes down to like things we understand, right? Not things I want to dismiss in any way, but it boils down to just not being prepared to have something that fundamental to our faith change. And I'm wondering, whatever comes of this vote, what are the faith formation opportunities? Like, how do we talk about change theologically? How do we teach people? How do we prepare people so that, like, even if this vote fails, and I hope it doesn't, even if this vote fails, the next vote has a possibility of succeeding because we've prepared people to exist in a faith that evolves, right? To exist in a living tradition. How do we do that work? How do we prepare people in that way?
Yeah. So naming that there are different forms of resistance and reactivity to, let's just not even say A2. Let's say there are different ways that resistance to an expectation or invitation to religious education and ongoing faith formation manifest in people in UU churches. And I spent the bulk of my career in congregations in the Northeast, on the main line, and in Arkansas and in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so I've seen it from a bunch of different spaces. I agree that it's super important to recognize that the most dangerous reactivity in these spaces, including Article 2, are those who, whether they realize it or not, truly are trying to shut the conversation down. because they feel it is a threat to things changing that they do not approve of. However, that, as I said, is a small number of people. There are many more people at the margins who are in a space of grieving, in a space of loss. And the beautiful thing about faith formation is that it allows us to meaningfully interact intentionally with the emotional, spiritual needs that are present, and to equip each other to do that in community. It's one of the great unique competencies of church still, to do that, to do it regularly, to do it in a multi-generational way, to have a no-fee entrance as a social experience. Those folks who are sad or feeling bereft or grieving are at risk of being pulled toward, I'm angry. So the recognition that there are some concentric circles here wherein we should be making sure we are offering a variety of resources and services and pastoral care and opportunities to talk and share, both at the one-to-one peer small group level, at the professional level from a shared ministry approach, and everything in between, is key. You know, Susan Beaumont said that it's in liminal spaces that there's so much great human work from anthropology. For so long, there's just a huge academic sort of literature base on this. But I think the most important thing I can say is Susan Beaumont described liminal spaces as those where we're leaving something behind. We've not yet quite gone through the doorway to what is next. And we stand on the threshold, both weighing our past and our future. And in that moment, which can be either a microsecond or it can be very long, we are given this, it's a form of, I feel like it's a form of psycho-spiritual experience that rituals often have helped people move through anthropologically throughout human history. And now churches are uniquely situated to help people who are in liminal spaces. Susan Beaumont says, liminal space is one of both great risk and great opportunity. And so if these moments give us the clarity to apply our theological convictions and our theological agreements to being with people in whatever state of concern, frustration, anxiety, anger they are, we will be much, much better able to truly draw the circle wider. It doesn't matter that some people will not agree, do not like, do not want the proposal change. It is not our goal, it should not be our goal theologically, to get people to that place. But informed consent is important. And anywhere you see authoritarianism start to rise, you start to see a chilling effect and a diminished emphasis on the importance of informed consent for individuals in the things that matter to their lives. And multicultural values tell us that those who are impacted should be at the table, right? So we want to make sure this conversation goes on. It really would not matter what a national baseline conversation was about our faith. What matters is that people are engaged in it. I believe that this will have a marked impact on our capacity, just like we saw a marked change in congregations who have taken part in beloved conversations. I'm not there anymore, so I'm not trying to sell anything. But my point is that anytime we experience a community who leans into the ideological work, what sociologists would call the ideological work of reifying what their values are in a real daily way, you see that those intentional communities have staying power. Well, a church is nothing if not an intentional community. When we dare to be audacious enough to expect adults to engage in what is essentially faith formation, we will see changes in their own capacity, in the health of their congregation, and in their lives as Unitarian Universalism, as Universalists. And that's, I think, all we can hope for.
So I just want to repeat back, you said when we expect adults to engage in faith formation.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, when we have a religious tradition that 11% of adults were raised UU, only 11%, right? The rest of us came to this faith, myself included, as an adult. And if we don't engage in faith formation, well, of course we're grieving the 7 principles because that's all we really know, right? I remember the first day I sat down in Susan Frederick Gray's church and heard her preach on Black Lives Matter and decided to become a UU. And I had an order of service in my hand and it listed the 7 principles. And I was like, oh, that's what this religion is all about. I like it. Check, I'm in. That's what I thought it was, right? And so if we're not faithfully engaging adults in continuous faith formation, of course we're grieving the only thing we thought described the tradition that we signed up for.
Yeah.
Ah, that's so powerful.
And I'm not so much interested in convincing people that this proposal is the right change
Agree.
as
100%.
preparing people to live in a faith that grows and evolves.
Right.
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 That right
There's
there.
a possibility of it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Right.
DC, say more. You got something going on there.
Oh, I just have all kind of grumbly things. My cat spilled my coffee a minute ago. The resistance I see that we talk about as conflict avoidance or aversion to discomfort. Some of it is grief, and some of it I think is shame. Some of it is embarrassment. Nobody wants to acknowledge that they've been a part of a system that has been hurting people and that they have benefited from that system and that they've enjoyed those benefits. And then learning that they come at the expense of other people that they purport to care for. And so, the response to any sort of vulnerability sometimes is anger, right? If somebody embarrasses me, I can get angry. Like that's the thing that comes up, right? What do you think you're talking about? Who are you talking? You don't know who I am, right? Or we need to change it. But I've been doing this right all these years. Like I don't want to learn now that I've been doing harm when I thought I've been doing good all these years. Like, because that makes me feel like a sucker for not being aware. And I think that's also part of why people get so hooked into the narrative of the right wing, because they don't want to acknowledge that they've been duped, that they've been suckers to somebody who's been fooling them for their own benefit, right? Nobody wants to acknowledge that they've been duped or been taken advantage of or been used, and that they got tricked, and that's embarrassing. And people will double down and double down and double down on that shit rather than acknowledge, oh my God, I was wrong. And Brene Brown talks about this a lot when it comes to toxic masculinity and how men in particular in our country are not allowed to show, are culturally discouraged. I won't say not allowed, culturally discouraged from expressing any form of vulnerability or any form of acknowledging that they were wrong or falling for one moment from the white horse that they've been told they need to be on for their whole lives. And so I think we look at the demographic of those who are resisting the liberatory work that we're talking about, a lot of them have been culturally conditioned in this never say sorry, never apologize, never acknowledge that you're wrong, just keep going, you're the hero, that kind of stuff. And this whole process is absolutely terrifying. Yeah. Oh, also, I wanted to say before we go too far, I emailed my DRE. My DRE is my director of lifespan education, I think is the official title here. But she's a 6th generation UU, Sarah Finney Kelly. And I said, what do you want me to ask? And she said, she wanted to know about the Foz Collective and what's going on there. And she said, oh, and the future of religious education. So I told her I would ask. So in the 10 minutes that we've got left, can you do something with that?
I'm no longer with the Foz Collaborative. I enjoyed my time there immensely the last almost 6 years, whatever. It was time to move on. They're doing great work. I would encourage anyone to check out Creating Theology Together to combat this individualist consumer kind of notion that we can build our own theology. Apologies to Dick Gilbert. It was great work. It became the most popular curriculum in Unitarian Universalism, and it needs to be dismantled. It served its purpose, and it's time for a more theologically aligned understanding that we are in this together. Or we will never be able to move beyond the faith development stage that tells us that we should that religion should be both sought and fought.
Okay.
So yeah, I would encourage anybody to check out Creating Theology Together, and Beloved Conversations is, of course, a time-honored, deeply impactful, transformative experience for congregations who are really ready to do the work of beginning to look within, then among, and then beyond their congregations to build the world that we dream about. With regard to this theological conviction or call for us, Michael, just to circle back and also to connect, the failure to understand our deep theology is a faith formation problem. This is like a flow chart where all of the answers keep coming back to the same one at the end. So I think what we need to do is understand there's a way in which in many types of groups of covenant circles or professional groups, there's a lot of kvetching about the circus. But the reality is it's our circus. There are monkeys. We're going to have to deal with this. If only there was like some system where there were places where people gather, where they have voluntarily agreed to do some work, and where they have elected or chosen and hired professionals to support them in that work. I mean, it's a dream. It's just a dream, y'all. But I want to be clear about this. We have the tools, and it's called, in particular, it's called religious professionals working together intentionally in shared ministry approaches, so that when the overwhelm and the anxiety of it all hits you too hard, I can lean in. And we have a group, a squad who are together understanding how do we use everything at our disposal, our music, our capacity to build our membership conversations, our administrative capacity, our ministerial capacity, our teaching, our preaching capacity. Getting those people together on the regular changes people, because you start to see, I'm not alone. This isn't a place of despair. This is a place for tactics. And we have the capacity, particularly now, I'm going to say, I always want to resist the siloing effect. The truth is that in systems where educators and children and youth, often gendered work, etc., historically, the truth is that there is most often a hierarchical component here. And I always want to avoid us reproducing the silos we complain about. The problem is, of course, that in those systems where there is such a lack of a power analysis, and too often there is injustice and rankism that is not in any way aligned with our theology. The problem is that silos allow religious educators, for example, to have some power and to keep on doing the work despite the everything outside, upstairs, whatever you want to say. So I just want to name that, and shared ministry is the antidote to that. while naming also that the people with the most power in this situation are ministers. If ministers are not on board with truly being intentional to move towards shared ministry, collaborative ministry approaches, we will continue to be under-equipped and overwhelmed by the way that the wider social landscape of anxiety and shame and fear and abandonment and rejection, we will continue to be overwhelmed by that, because there is no algorithm by which that is going to magically be fixed. We are the magic. That's what religion has always done for people, is help people do better and act more like they want to act to create the community they want to live in. So I continue to desire, hope, wish cast, pray, and imagine the power that our shared ministry approaches can bring. And I want to say, the last few years, but in particular the last couple of months, have lifted up some truly egregious losses in religious education. Those higher profile losses and transitions are great to get our attention. They are, again, a fraction of what has happened as we have deprofessionalized the faith, all the work that so many did for so long to make sure we were professionalized. We are experiencing a sea change in our professional capacity as religious educators, and the transitions, if you can call them that. That is a very thoughtful way for me to say it, but some of the transitions that are happening mirror those that have happened for years. There's going to need to be a very intentional solidarity approach wherein ministers recognize that calling their congregation to embody just practices. That doesn't necessarily mean you give a DRE all your money, even if you don't have money, but daring to think creatively and literally with religious educators for solutions that can still work even in times of change and even in times when there is not as much abundance, is so important here. Because if we do not let the method, if we do not let the message be the model, the model won't be the message. What I mean really here is that we have to start somewhere. And when we are losing religious educators at such a clip, some aren't just leaving their work, they're leaving the faith. And the folks who are coming in, that attrition rate is shocking, but the folks who are coming in oftentimes are coming into situations where they don't have the training, they don't get the professional development funding, they are not prepared, nor are they on the route to getting prepared to be a meaningful, powerful member of a shared ministry approach. So we are, ever heard budgeting for decline? That's what's happening in our religious education sphere right now. I deeply, deeply call and urge ministers who feel the resonance of what I'm saying to recognize with a power analysis that without a groundswell from you, this will not change. My position at the UUA, I thought I was going to talk more about that, but my position at the UUA calls me to step into a role, lead into a role that has not existed for a couple of years, but did for many years before that, with folks in this type of position like Gail Forsyth-Vale, Pat Kahn, others. This is a national sort of DRE position, for lack of a better term. I think that's helpful. Some of the things that I am expected to do in this position are big picture things. For example, discern the strategies and methods needed to help congregations invest in religious education. I mean, think about that for a second. Investment means time, talent, and treasure. This is a big ask, and that's one of about 10 big asks that are on my job description. As such, I am really going to need the input of people in the field telling me what's going on, what do you need, what would be most helpful, and I am 100% dedicated to bridging some of these conversations, especially around shared ministry, and any invite anyone wants to give me, I would love to come talk to your folks about this in a way that brings you in, doesn't push you out, and imagines how, even for ministers, your experience can be so much better when a shared ministry approach allows you to fully live into your ministry rather than being destroyed and immersed in it constantly with so much going on. So that was just my call out to
Joy.
ministers. And I want religious educators to know I'm always thinking about you.
Thank you so much. As you know, we at the CLF are all about collaborative ministry and about changing the way that this screwed up model has taught us to exist.
I just don't understand what's wrong with people. Like, what the fuck? You're given a religious educator. You're given a fucking wizard. Like, you've got Merlin on your staff. Don't stifle the genius. My God. You're given somebody amazing who's going to do amazing things, whose job it is to do amazing things. Help them do the amazing. Don't be an ass. Oh, my God.
The genius isn't being heard along with the Rev title.
Yep.
It was there before, and it's there for other people too.
Like, okay, look.
Yeah,
George,
but
George W. Bush was one of the dumbest people ever president, okay? Really. But he surrounded himself with smart people and let them be smart.
And they helped him do lots of evil.
They helped him do lots of evil. But if you are a person for good and you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, imagine what you can accomplish.
We could have an entire show about collaborative ministry, and maybe we will in September in season 10. And we would love to have you back, Joy, to talk about collaborative ministry anytime. This has been The View, or The View, as our beloved Kiana today, who is having some technical problems, would say. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.